Hello, hello, hello. If you landed here, you've landed on Let's Talk News. I'm your host, Leticia Remauro, and I'm sorry I was a couple of seconds late. I was reading the Fauci diaries. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. The only thing that I could say is, I told you so. And I didn't tell you so because we all here knew and had the opinion that Fauci was lying the whole time and that this whole COVID thing was being covered up, changed, used for political reasons, whatever. But we knew for sure that Fauci was not who he portrayed himself to be. As a matter of fact, those of you who remember when the show was called The Right Stuff and Jen and I were on the show together, we had the Fauci Award for Gullible People. And it was an award given to people who will believe any bullshit that they hear, so long as the media says, follow the science, and all puts it on. And that's what happened with COVID and Fauci. And how do we know? Because Rand Paul released his diaries. He got the diaries as part of preliminary investigation into what happened with COVID, because they're having a hearing tomorrow and Fauci is due to testify. This should be something spectacular, especially when you see the diaries, which I will show you in a minute. Let me just say hello to everybody. Hello, Francine. Good to have you. Hello, Kevin Wall from the other side of the world, but the same side of the issues. Hello, Karen. Good to have you. Kevin Young is with us. Hi, Colleen. This is our show, Colleen. Colleen and I met over COVID and became good friends over COVID. And yeah, this is stuff. Hi, Angela Ricca, my sweetheart. How are you? Colleen and I were talking about this yesterday, and she was saying that she didn't even see it on the news. Now, I know CBS was covering some of it, but really the only one that was covering it in depth was Fox, of course. Yeah, isn't that something he admitted to? The vaccines don't work. Yeah, it's we knew they didn't work. We knew that it was just stuff to keep people under control, right? To see how far they could push people. It was like 9/11. After, the 9/11 investigations, and I have the book here somewhere, they started, telling us we had to basically undress before we could get on planes. And all that was fine, right? We all took off our shoes and were patted down and spent an extra hour at the airport. And nobody really bitched and complained because we felt it was for our own safety after 9/11, which, oh, by the way, was 25 years ago. But then when the illegal migrants were coming in, they were coming and going as they pleased. No security, no patting down. And we kind of had it. And now we don't take off our shoes. Instilling fear for control. That's right. He won't answer anything like the last time. Yeah, but he may not answer anything. But the diaries are going to be read. And okay, let's see. I'm going to share so that you could all see. I don't know. Have you all seen it? The diaries. Here is the website. It is on Rand Paul, www.paulsenate.gov, and then you go to, well, hold on to show you. This is the reading room, paul.senate.gov reading room, and then this is the prequel. This is from 2001 through 2015, and this is 2025. I'm sorry. This is the January 30th. I'm sorry, January 31st, 2020, and then now the side hustle, which we know Fauci, NIH is a very interesting place. When I was the Republican chair, I had some of the researchers in Staten Island, and a couple of them wound up over at NIH, and they were telling me about how people were making money hand over fist there. And Fauci made almost $1 million there in NIH. But anyway, that's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about the money. We are talking about Fauci's diary, and this is the diary. This is what it looks like. Here are the notes. I mean, the chairman kind of brought things together. He called things out. Most importantly, where did it come from? Where did the virus come from? And what Fauci said privately, the scientists were staring at the furin cleavage site and talking about deliberate insertion. If the virus came from a lab, an accidental release was considered the more likely scenario. And then what he said publicly, Fauci said the virus was, quote, totally consistent with an animal to human jump. Weeks later, he dismissed a natural virus escaping from a lab as a circular argument. Basically, he, especially here, I mean, I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'll let you do it. But he had a group of people come together. The first alarm went straight to Fauci. On January 31st, Jeremy Farrar patched him into a call with Christian Anderson. Eddie Holmes was already in the loop. They were not trading internet rumors. They were staring at the furin cleavage site, discussing deliberate insertion and weighing whether the virus had escaped from a laboratory. Before most Americans knew there was an origins debate, the government's top infectious disease official was already confronting the lab scenario. He didn't just join the process, he set it in motion. After the January 31st warning, Fauci proposed a larger expert group called HHS officials, consulted Alex Azar, and brought in Francis Collins. The government then split the work into two tracks, a security side review through OSTP and the national academies, and an international scientific track led by Fauci and Farrar. Fauci was not on the edge of the origins inquiry. He was helping design it from the first night. Okay, now you've got to remember here, this is where America goes, is where the world goes. It's just the way it is. So that's just fact. Okay, hang on a second. He basically drove this whole scenario, and the whole world bought it. February 1st call was not a consensus for Nature. The call included Collins, Farrar, Valiant, Anderson, Holmes, Fauci, Drosten, Gary, and others. According to Fauci's own account, Fauci and Drosten argued for a natural origin. Quote, the rest thought deliberate insertion was possible. With Xi's and Gali's coronavirus work hanging over the discussion, Fauci wrote, we could not let this go. His diary describes a room divided over a lab scenario, not a room that had ruled one out. Then the public story hardened. On February 6th, the government's first formal review found no clear evidence of malfeasance, but still said the issue needed investigation. By April 17th, Fauci was telling the country the virus was, quote, totally consistent with a natural species jump. By May, he was brushing aside a laboratory accident as a circular argument. The possibility that had triggered urgent calls, a security review, and an international conference was suddenly presented to the public as barely worth entertaining. So he was doing this on his own. There was no consultation with the president or anybody else, no investigators. He made these decisions. When questions returned, the fight moved to the messaging. In May 2021, Fauci wrote that HHS public affairs officials resisted an NIH statement. Proactive talking points and direct responses to congressional inquiries about Wuhan. His warning was blunt. If the government stayed quiet, it would look like, quote, we're covering things up. That is exactly how deep the credibility problem had become. The fight was no longer confined to the science. It was now about what NIH would say and what answers Congress would receive. This is crazy. Fauci pushed back on the FBI's lab leak case. On July 7, 2021, Fauci met with Beth Cameron and Mayor Bitter, the NSC's Senior Director for Intelligence Programs. Inside the EEOB skiff, Fauci wrote that the FBI, quote, had no idea what they're talking about because it was convinced COVID originated in a laboratory leak. That's the FBI, okay? They didn't know what they were talking about. He then urged the NSC officials to work closely with Anderson Holmes, Gary, and Rembert, the same scientific circle at the center of the early origins calls. And if you remember, they were for Nature. Fauci was not just listening to the intelligence debate, he was actively arguing against the FBI's position and direct officials toward the experts he trusted. Fauci's defense came down to allies and definitions. After another conversation with Anderson, Fauci wrote that he felt, quote, much better knowing Anderson backed what he had been saying. Then late EcoHealth reports showed increased viral growth and sicker mice. Fauci acknowledged that some would call it gain of function, but held the line. It was not gain of function, quote, by our definition. By then, the argument had narrowed from what actually happened in Wuhan to who got to define the terms. Okay, so this is your guy. This is follow the science. This is the man who created havoc throughout the world, and it gets much worse. Now he should be charged with murder. 1 million more people died than needed to die because of what Fauci did. Yes, he was pardoned by Biden for good reason, because that diary was out there, right? But he could be pardoned for a federal crime, but states can go after him. If 50 states decided to prosecute him, if Australia and if the world decided to prosecute Fauci, I know that the states could prosecute him. Cuomo, look at what happened to Cuomo. Cuomo took his advice, and look at what happened to Cuomo. He wound up out on his ear. Yeah. Let's see. He was, Lucille says, hi. How did it break out of Chinese lab? And was it in every country around the world in 1 week with a week? The mind boggles. Well, right. Here's the thing. And here's what people kind of traced is that in January, people from China, people whose home was in China or Chinese migrants went home to China for Chinese New Year. Was it in January? I can't remember what month Chinese New Year is. Whatever month that is, Lunar New Year. Is it October? Then they came back. They went back to where they were working, especially in Italy, because they were getting ready for Fashion Week. And that's why Italy was the first place China was the first place that it broke out, but China's not going to admit that people are sick or that something's wrong. So they took it to Italy, and Italy, where they were sewing a lot of the clothing and stuff for Fashion Week, that's where Italy started noticing people getting sick. And if you remember, the president was making, I forget what he used. It was a mandate to make respirators because Italy said that this was a respiratory situation and they needed more ventilators. And so Trump put some of our top mechanics on making ventilators, and he made dozens and dozens and sent them over to Italy. but then we found out that that wasn't the way to treat it. And then it started showing up in America in January. Late 20, late 19, early 20, it started showing up here. I got it in February of 2020 when it was, they were putting people in the hospital and they were blowing up their lungs with the ventilators because they were following what Europe was doing, and they didn't have the information. They didn't have enough information. And then it, all of a sudden it's in Australia. So it was that going home for the Lunar New Year that apparently, and then Fashion Week, that accelerated everything. Kevin, that's how I understand it. Hello, Professor. My Happy New Year avatar from China was a rat with a face mask I got after Thanksgiving. Okay, so it was November. Well, somebody can look it up for me, right? March 16th, everything shut down. 2019, yeah. But when is Chinese New Year 2019? Hold on. Chinese was on Tuesday. Oh, Tuesday, February 2019. So that was right. So that was 20. So and when was Fashion Week? Hold on. No. So it would be 20. When is the Chinese New Year 2019 was in? So if that was in February of 2019, so that would be 2020. So is it always in February? Oh, so in 2020, okay, here, that makes more sense. In 2020, Fashion Week was January 20th. I'm sorry, Chinese New Year was January 25th. And when was Fashion Week? Hold on. When was Fashion Week in 2020? I'll tell you in a second. February of 2020. It was in New York, February 2020, London, Milan, February 18th, Paris, the 24th, New York, the 6th, and London was the 14th. Okay, so that timeline coincides. Okay, so January was the Chinese New Year, and then they went back to sewing in Milan, and they went wherever they had to go. So already picking it up from China and bringing it around the world. So there you go. And Trump was a xenophobe for canceling the flights. Yeah, I never got it, nor did my wife. Yeah, neither did Colleen. I got it. My husband got it. My whole family got it. And then they wanted us to get the shot, even though we had like antibodies through the roof. Professor says he got it in December of 2019. Right, because there were early cases. But they didn't know what they were. Who was it? It was my grandson that had a flu-like symptoms around Christmas time, before Christmas time, and they didn't know what that was about. Yeah, I got it, the virus. Yeah. Pelosi was celebrating Chinese New Year, telling everyone to come out. That's right. Absolutely. More people were getting sick, more from wearing masks, which were necessary, and they're still wearing them today. Right. Well, the masks didn't work because it was microscopic. And, what Fauci was doing was basically following what they did for the Spanish flu. He did exactly the same thing as they did for the Spanish flu. So go read these diaries because they're a little synopsis, but you've got to read it in his own words because it's going to blow your mind. And then tomorrow we're going to listen. But here is Dr. Atlas, who Fauci got rid of because he disagreed with him on the origins and how to treat it and what it was. Watch.
Fauci called you a real problem in his diary and asked for you to be removed from the task force. What's your response to everything he said?
Well, Laura, I wish I could say it was a surprise, but I saw it with my own eyes when I was there. In fact, I wrote about it in my book. First of all, he had a pathologic personality of a narcissist. I was told, and this is third hand, that he was standing on the White House lawn handing out cards to the reporters to solicit interviews before I got there. This is really somebody who prioritized himself, as has been said already tonight on your show. Was thrilled to be hanging out with Hollywood elites and doing podcasts with Julia Roberts and talking to Barbara Streisand. Meanwhile, working class people were being destroyed. They were being killed. You have to realize he was lying, but he admitted it here. But I knew he was lying the whole time. He admitted that he was in charge and recommended and persuasive about shutting schools, doing the lockdowns in New York, California has been said here. He admitted that, in fact, he knew that I was not for letting it rip. He was letting the media run with that, and because he wanted to delegitimize anyone who disagreed with him and make it seem like I and others were dangerous. Yeah. He admitted that by name explicitly that schools were not sources of spreading. He said I was right about that, but he let the schools maintain closure this is from fall of 2020. Children were being destroyed. He didn't bother to correct that. We have to remember what Bobby Kennedy and you have already said, though. He presided over the most destructive, most unethical fiasco in modern health history. More than 1 million extra Americans died from the policy over the 3 years of 2020 to 23 compared to if we would have done what Sweden did. His policies destroyed kids, healthy kids, poor kids, and, not only all of the things, peaks in spousal abuse, child abuse, drug abuse. These are long-lasting problems, including losing trust in all of science.
So that was Dr. Atlas, and he wrote a book about Fauci, uncovering a lot of or shredding the mystique of this supposed brilliant scientist who was nothing but fame whore. I think Francine said correct. And we always knew that because Fauci was behind the whole, he was there during the AIDS crisis, and he fucked that up too in the 1980s. He got that all wrong too. And as Colleen rightly said, they said that, a drop of spit could get the infection. You can get the infection from a drop of spit. So that's why you needed the mask. That's why you needed 6 feet apart. But when they were swabbing you to see if you had COVID, they were shoving that all the way up into the, into the nasal cavity, all the way up. Why? None of it made sense. None of it. That mandating the shot for people who already had COVID and had more antibodies than the shot could create. Why? And then people getting sick with the shot and them saying, oh, no, that's not the cause. It was crazy stuff. You're right, Colleen. Nobody's talking about this genocide, but they're talking about it now. So what the professor is saying is that the avatar of the rat with the mask, the Chinese were circulating that before anyone was aware of COVID. So they were aware something was going on in China, but it didn't, we didn't get the information. Yes, like your mom, Colleen, absolutely like your mom. Colleen lost her mom during COVID and she got the shot. So many people who got the shot, who got poor treatment, who did not get the proper treatment because they didn't know what they were dealing with, because there were so many, they kept talking about following the science, but nobody was doing any science. As I said, when we got it early, and our whole family got it. And we were talking about a teenager. We were talking about a couple of women in their 30s. I was in my 50s at the time. My husband was in his 60s. So when we all 5 got it, I called our doctor and said, all right, well, here's the symptoms. Where do you put the information in? And we were all treated differently because it was different phases. And he said to me, there is no one repository. There's no place to provide anecdotal information, which blew my mind, because I'm saying to myself, if they don't know what this disease is and what's working and what's not working, then how are they going to know how to treat it? Who's doing the research? Turns out nobody was doing the research. Everybody was doing the media spin, because Fauci was doing the media trek. He was promoting himself, but he wasn't discussing the symptoms and what to do. Now, if you recall, what was it? Oh my God. The malaria medicine, which I took, that very cheap pill that New York outlawed. It wouldn't allow us to use it. And as a matter of fact, my doctor got it for me. They would give it to you if you were traveling to like Africa or something like that. And it was a treatment for malaria. Oh God, I'll remember it in a minute. Anyway, that's what they used to treat me. My husband was treated with a different full spectrum antibiotic. My daughter was treated with the Z-Pack. My grandson wasn't treated at all because it passed. And my other daughter, she treated herself with a tea made of lemon and hot pepper for 5 days. And all of us came through it. Nanotechnology particles in the swab. Then they banned ivermectin and hydrochloroquine. That's it. Right. And both of those things were banned. And they're cheap drugs. And they actually worked. Hydroxychloroquine. I was in shock when Cuomo decided that hydroxychloroquine could not be prescribed in New York. And then ivermectin was not allowed to be prescribed nationwide. And the doctors went along with it. That was the worst part. No doctor, well, I'm not going to say no. There was a whole underworld of us who were questioning everything. And that's what banned us from a lot of, that kicked me off of YouTube so many times. The shot was meant to not give the virus, but not to get it. Right. But it did give the virus. That was the whole problem. So nobody was trusting the science anymore, and nobody was trusting the media. That's when I think the world lost faith in science and the media. And now, I mean, men having babies, I think that the whole science thing is out the window. It started hitting the ERs in Staten Island in January 2020, but they didn't know how to treat it. Right? One of my friends' father got his lungs blown out by a ventilator. He didn't need it. And didn't Jen get sick? Yeah, Jen got sick. First it was Ty, then it was Jen, then it was Lily, then it was Bob. I was the last one to fall. I lost my voice. I lost my sense of smell. It was, yeah. And poor Bob, I lost my voice. I couldn't talk for days, and he was too sick to enjoy it. Yeah. My Facebook account was banned because I shared the Post article that the hydroxychloroquine works. Right. I remember. Colleen lost her Facebook account so many times. How many of you lost your social media account because we talked about COVID? I mean, even now, I wonder how many people will see this, because COVID was a no-no. And ivermectin is showing progress with cancer, so they couldn't have people using it widespread and curing their cancer. Right. As a matter of fact, I was just talking to a friend who has cancer and is using ivermectin, and he was pretty far gone. It was in his organs. It was in his liver and his spine and his lung, and now it's gone from his liver and his spine. Yeah, Colleen lost that account for 3 years. So many on event didn't make it. I was working for a doctor at the time. It was so scary how, Italy decides to put people on event because they said it was Fauci said it was a respiratory situation, and people died because they did not need the ventilator. What they needed was warm fluids, because the cold fluids were making the saliva thick. So the warm fluids actually helped you cough it up and get rid of it. My boss's wife's tumor completely gone from it. Yeah, isn't that interesting with ivermectin? And it's good to know. Okay, this is a little long, so we're going to go over, but it's worth listening to. This is Laura Ingraham talking, seen and unseen, talking with Aurora about Fauci seeking fame. You're not going to believe this.
Look, Laura, when you read these things, what emerges is a guy obsessed with his own celebrity and any celebrity, really. At one point, he writes of Julia Roberts, when my image came up on the screen, she gasped and said that every time she sees me, her throat gets dry and she gets nervous and excused herself to go into the kitchen and get a glass of water. Now, he was apparently doing a lot of celebrity house calls, Laura, during this period. And they had bought into the Fauci publicity machine.
How rad that we have maybe the coolest man on the planet right now. Wow, and there's the room. This is intense. Does anybody else have?
Hello.
You truly have emerged as a personal hero for me. Just to have this little corner of your time for us is such a joy.
Laura, you can't make this up. So there's the moment that he writes about in the diary. And as you mentioned earlier, I got to read this quote. He says, it's not hyperbole to say I am the most famous and talked about person in the country, Anthony Fauci. How could he say this?
No, but Raymond,
I've got more. I've got more coming. I've got more.
But Raymond, really quickly, he is managing, right, the response to this pandemic that he says is the worst thing ever. And yet he has time to sit down with Pretty Woman. Like, what? How do you have time to do that if you're Anthony Fauci?
Not only Julia Roberts, I can top it. He was also apparently doing telehealth counseling with Barbara Streisand, okay? In addition to, this is from the diary, in addition to diagnosing, quote, a lesion on her buttocks, he writes, had great call with Barbara Streisand. I told her that I work listening to her songs on Alexa. She really did not know what Alexa was. I brought the phone over to Alexa and asked to play songs by Barbara Streisand. When the song came on loud and clear, she started laughing and absolutely loved it. No, Laura, I mean, so now we have kids are depressed, school is out of session. Now we've got a suicide rate going through the roof, but happy days are here again for Anthony Fauci. I'm glad he had a good time. Nobody rained on that parade, that's for sure.
Wait, Raymond, do we have any other word on how that lesion on her buttocks healed?
Well, he does say that it healed up, and he advised her to get the mRNA vaccine, which leads to all these horrible outcomes. So Bab's lawyers, I'm sure, may be calling Grand Paul's committee before
Raymond,
it's all over.
What was that terrible movie of hers? The Mirror Has Two Faces. Was it,
yes,
right?
The Mirror Has Two Faces.
The buttocks has two faces. What? This is crazy.
Well,
all right. What was going on with Ari Emanuel, the talent agent, Raymond, and Fauci?
Yeah. There is a moment in the diary where Fauci writes, got a call from Ari Emanuel today. He wants to come over to the house for dinner and explain to me how naive I am and not fully appreciating just how much money I can get from book deals, films, speeches. He's very obviously hot to be my agent when I step down from the United States government. I mean, the guy is, he's clearly on the make the entire time. The diary is tear-inducing because his kind of lack of self-awareness and how bad this looks in print. Who would write this stuff? The only thing he did turn down that I appreciate is he turned down Dancing with the Stars, which was probably a good move, Laura.
But Raymond, remember, he was in office over at NIH since 1984, I believe, or something, 84?
Yeah.
So when I was in college, you were like in junior high, and he was in government. Okay, he's the highest paid employee at government, made like $450K, And he's worried about, like, what would I be on the cover of the book? Would I be in a bathing suit with the sunglasses?
Well, look, we don't know if he engaged in gain-of-function research, but he certainly engaged in fame-in-function research.
Yeah, Colleen says this is what he was doing. He wasn't researching. He wasn't using NIH to try to figure out how to keep us healthy. He wasn't using the resources that he had to find the origin. I mean, we know that the scientist who was playing with it in the Wuhan lab wound up dead, and so did many others. But was he trying to get the information, the research from them? Did he talk to President Trump and say, listen, we need to talk to Xi Jinping and we need to get those documents? No, he undermined the FBI and decided on his own what should happen with the country. And it wasn't a clear-eyed view either. There was, hold on a second, there's an entry here that I want to talk about. Yeah. All right, hold on a second. I want to share the screen because this was really interesting to me. There we go. Okay. January 3rd, 2020, influenza is heavy in the media. Did an interview with Elizabeth Cohen of CNN for her blog. Also did a live radio interview with John Catsimatidis for his roundtable from New York City. Also yesterday, the U.S., via a precise drone strike in Iraq outside of Baghdad airport, killed the leader of the Iranian Quds Force, General Qasem Soleimani. There has been, over the past few days, attacks on the U.S. Embassy by Iranian-backed Iraqi militia as a result of the fact that the U.S. armed forces attacked and killed 25 Iranian-backed Iraqi militia who had killed a USA contractor and wounded several USA soldiers in Iraq. This will certainly lead to major escalation of tension and even retaliation from Iran. Also, 44 unusual cases of pneumonia in Wuhan, China, over the past couple of days. Etiology still unknown. Said to be a viral pneumonia of unknown etiology. Flu ruled out. Cases linked to a seafood market. No human-to-human transmission documented at this time. So this was his January 3rd addition to his diary. Why was he talking in his diary about the Iraq war or about Soleimani being killed? How does that fit into his notes? Now, there's a whole nother diary out there. It's the prequel. I put the, I'll do it again. I put the link in here. I'm going to put it again. It's the reading room. Go read it yourself. It's interesting reading, but it's also scary. Let's see. Chinese radio was talking about COVID in fall 2019 here in New York City. That's interesting. Did not know that. Thank you, Professor, for sharing that. Who is the woman that was always with him during COVID broadcasts? Every day she had a different pretty scarf around her neck. What happened to her? Yeah, I forget her name, but yeah. God. Oh, it's on the tip of my tongue. Kate is her first name. Can't remember the last name. Makes you wonder what was buried deeper, this or that. Yeah. So, yeah. Tomorrow is going to be an interesting day. I will be glued to the television watching this hearing. I don't know if he will be arrested afterwards or what, probably not. But the fact that this is all coming out is, I feel vindicated. I don't know about all of you. I feel vindicated because we knew we were being fed a bunch of bullshit. And I want apologies from, I mean, my whole career as a politician was tainted because of a closure of a bar where I likened the mandated closure by Cuomo of this restaurant when the restaurants across the street were open. I likened it to what happened in Nazi Germany, and that went viral throughout all the newspapers, and I was labeled as an anti-Semite during my campaign for borough president, and still to this day it follows me, all because of COVID. Because when we couldn't get contractors working and people were put out of work and the government was hemorrhaging money to keep people home and the economy was plummeting, we were out there in April, May, demanding that they let the doctors get back to their offices, that people have checkups. People were missing cancer treatments, dialysis. Everything was upside down. But at any rate, I feel at least vindicated that we all knew that this was bullshit. And now it's being proven to be true. Okay. So thank you all for joining me. Remember, if you are on YouTube, please subscribe. We're losing subscribers. And now after tonight, probably even more. And share with your friends. Okay. Love you all. I will see you tomorrow at 8 p.m.